Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. I'm really excited for today's Hangout. We have a special treat today. So in 2013, the Rising Star Cave System was the site of an astonishing discovery of over 1,500 fossil elements belonging to a previously unknown early human relative, now named Homo naledi. This was an incredibly difficult and dangerous work in the cave system, 40 meters below the ground, with steep climbs and passages as small as 7 inches to get to the Naledi chamber. Today, we're going to meet some of the expedition team and also learn about the launch of Naledi VR, an experience that's going to take people underground and make the site accessible to everyone. So we have a few people joining us today. We have Becca Pexado, who's a member of the original 6 women who excavated and brought Naledi to the surface, and her specialization was in fact identifying spots to excavate as well as the process of the excavation. We also have Ellen Foyer-Eagle joining us, and she is from the University of Washington. She was one of the original members on the team as well and studies shoulders and biomechanics of Homo naledi. And finally, we have Miguel Ochoa joining us today. He's a PhD student working with Ellen, and he also narrates the VR experience in Spanish. So that's pretty awesome. So Ellen, Becca, and Miguel, it's so great to have you all joining us today. I'll turn your microphones on if you want to say a quick hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
All right. And then Becca, I think you're going to get us started, and then we'll hop over and we'll talk to Ellen and Miguel as well.
Great. So I'm going to share my screen with you so I can show you some pictures. Maybe. All right. Okay. So I have a question for everyone, and I wonder if, can you see this video? I wonder if you'd like to have to do this to get to your job every day. This is our friend Matabella. He's one of the folks that works underground with us, and he is crawling through a spot we call the Superman crawl, and it's part of what we have to do every day to get in and out of the cave. Anytime we're working underground, we have to go through the Superman crawl. There's no way around it. It's pretty fun, actually. But it's different. It's different from like just hopping on the school bus and getting off the school bus at school. So I am right now, I'm in Dallas, Texas, and Ellen and Miguel are over there in Washington State. But the places that we're talking about today are actually in South Africa, in an area called the Cradle of Humankind. And specifically, it's in a cave called the Rising Star Cave. And you can see on this little map of the cave where Superman Crawl is there in the, I don't know if I have a pointer. There in the middle, that's the Superman crawl, and it's actually one of the easier parts of getting into this, getting into the cave, because we have to also climb up this steep dragon's back, and then all the way down through this chute, which is only about 7 inches wide at its narrowest point. So I think probably most of the students could probably fit through, but sometimes when you get to people that are a little bit taller and a little bit older, it's harder for them to get through. So it's pretty exciting that those of us that get to go into the cave can do it. On the top here, you can see what it looks like around the cave. That's what the surface looks like. And then on the bottom, all of those pictures are fossils, pictures of bones that we've found in the cave. And on this side over here, you can see the one that looks like a mash and doesn't look like very much. There's actually ribs in that pile right there. And then in the middle, there's a jaw with all kinds of nice looking teeth in it. And then on the other side, those skinny bones that are sort of lined up next to each other, that's actually a hand. Those are hand bones all laid out there. And those are some of the things that we've found when we've been underground. And all of those bones, here's some of the fossils we've excavated. All of those fossils belong to this guy here, who's an ancient human relative. It's about 250,000 years old, and we call it Homo naledi. So they're sort of related to us. They're in our same genus, because we're Homo sapiens, but it's a different species. And really, we're not sure sort of what kind of a cousin of ours they are. We haven't quite figured that out yet. We found lots and lots of bones. So you can see just a couple more pictures of some of the fossils. This fossil right here you're looking at is part of a skull. And Homo naledi, and I'm sure Ellen will tell you more about this, Homo naledi has some parts of its body that look a whole lot like ours, like its hands and its feet, and then some parts of its body, like its shoulders, that don't look very much like ours at all. Oops, there's another picture of a hand. And so Mr. Grabowski mentioned that there were 6 of us who did the excavations back in 2013, and it just so happened that we were all women, and that was pretty exciting. So Ellen is the 3rd one from the left, and I'm the one that's far on the left. But you can see all of our other colleagues there, Aaliyah and Marina and Lindsay and Hannah. And it was pretty special to be part of a team of all women scientists who got to go into this dangerous and remote place to excavate these fossils. And so this video is going to give you a little bit of an idea of what it's like to move around in the cave in places other than that Superman crawl. And that black bag that you can see is full of fossils. It weighs about 25 kilos, and it has fossils in it. We want to be really careful we don't damage it. So you can see that sometimes we have to drag it across our bodies, and it takes loads and loads of people working together to make it work. And we have to use ropes like rock climbers do. We need people in our team have all different kinds of specialties, from excavating to working the ropes to doing geology or understanding particular parts of the skeleton that they're specialists in. And really, we need a whole lot of people to work together. It gives you an idea of how difficult it is to move stuff in and out of here. Oop, and there goes Marina and the box back through Superman crawl. It's pretty tight in there. And so I just wanted to show you some pictures of the other folks that we work with, because we're in a group of scientists, and there's about 150 of us that all work at this project in different ways. Some people go underground, like the people you see here. Some people work with the technology, work with the computers, like the folks that you see here, making models of the fossils that we find. And other people work with the fossils themselves in the lab, doing all the analysis to understand what the bones mean. So we need people with all kinds of different interests and specialties to work with us. And then, of course, we have this new virtual reality that we're pretty excited about. And I just wanted to show you these 2 comparison pictures. There's one picture, the one that's sort of red tinged, is a picture that Ellen took that is of the real cave, what the cave really looks like. And that was in 2013. And the picture on the other side is what the virtual cave looks like. And you can see that they're pretty close to looking almost exactly the same. And in the virtual reality, of course, you can pick up fossils and look at them in a way that you wouldn't be able to do in the cave itself. So that's sort of my little introduction. And if I can figure out how to stop sharing my screen with you. There we go. And then, yeah, I'll turn it over to Ellen and Miguel.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Becca. That was great. Yeah, that's quite the commute to get to your working sites. And then to get to the chamber, the Naledi, would you say about half an hour to get in and out?
Yeah, nowadays, when we first started, it was closer to 45 minutes, but that was because we had to learn the way to go. And now we all know the way to go a little bit better, so we can get there faster. It's really dark in there, and you have to learn, because it's so small, you have to learn sort of which part of your body to put where when, otherwise you get kind of tangled up.
All right, well, let's jump over and turn Ellen's microphone on.
Hello.
Ellen, it's so great to have you joining us today. We'd love to hear a little bit about you, and then maybe if you want to share a couple experiences from being one of the first 6 to go in there and bring Naledi to the surface.
Okay, so I am what's called a postdoctoral research associate here at the University of Washington. When I first started on the Rising Star project with Becca and the other ladies, I was actually a PhD student in Australia studying paleoanthropology, so the study of human origins, the origins of our species. I have a particular interest in the upper limb, so the shoulder, your elbow, and your wrist. Not so much the hand, although that is interesting to me. And I'm particularly interested about what we call the form-function interface. So how the way that we interact with our environment impacts the way our bones are shaped over evolutionary time. So how the ways that we adapt to our environment can actually fundamentally alter the shapes of our bones. And, you know, a little bit about reconstructing the behavior of past species based on what we know about how form and function interact in the skeleton. So sharing a couple of experiences. So I think one of the formative ones, one of the first experiences I had in the system was quite literally going down into the chamber for the first time. We were told pretty early on that there was a lot of material down there, or at least there appeared to be a lot of material down there. And, the thing about paleoanthropology and fossil sites is that we have a very skewed idea of what a lot can mean. Like a successful field season in most other contexts, in most other sites, could mean 2 or 3 fossils. That's a lot of fossils historically in paleoanthropology. And so when Lee was talking to us about sort of what he could see on the photos and what the other cavers had seen in the chamber already, and they were talking about a lot of material, I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then eventually getting down into the site for the first time and realizing with absolutely totally gobsmacked wonder that the site was literally littered with fossil material. There were bones just absolutely everywhere. I could never have imagined seeing that much fossil material in one place, aside from perhaps a museum. And that was kind of like the first moment when I realized that this is actually a really special site. This is a really unusual context to find fossils in, and especially in this particular abundance. Yeah, like, you think the trajectory of what your career is going to look like over time, and then something totally throws a wrench into the works and makes you rethink everything that you thought you knew, right?
Yeah. So Ellen, a question for you. A lot of the students might not know the story about how Lee, Professor Berger, recruited the team for this expedition. Where did you find kind of the ad for this, and then what did you think when you first saw something like that?
So Lee Berger, the fellow who sort of oversees and runs the entirety of the project, had been approached initially by a couple of cavers who had encountered some human-like material in one of the caves that they were exploring. So Lee had sort of realized sometime previously that paleoanthropology, or the study of human evolution, has a bit of what we call a backyard problem, where we have these really well-established and productive sites, and so we constantly dig in these sites, but we really don't look beyond the borders of them. And so Lee put out a notice to the local sort of South African speleological and caving clubs saying that, if you see anything that looks human-like in any of your explorations, let me know. Take some photos and bring them to me and let me know. So Rick and Steve had been exploring what is now the Rising Star sort of cave system, and had encountered all of this material. So they'd taken photos and they'd taken it to Lee and said, here's the stuff. Is it actually of interest to you? And Lee immediately jumped on it, immediately recognized it as being potentially fossil hominin material or something very closely related to us, and went about sort of trying to figure out how he could bring the right people in to get to the site. And the one major complicating factor is that the only way to get into the site is through this really sort of quite a long vertical chute that has this really narrow pinch point. Now, most excavators probably can't get into the site. It requires a very particular combination of experience. He needed people who had some sort of caving and climbing experience, but also the requisite sort of paleoanthropological and archaeological skills to do the work once they were down there. So it's not just a matter of getting into the site, but also being able to conduct yourself on the site. Not knowing, quite the right people for the job in South Africa, he had decided to take an unconventional approach to recruiting the right people for the job. And so what Lee did was he put an ad on Facebook, of all the things, asking for people with this combination of caving and climbing experience as well as archaeological experience as well. I didn't actually see the advert on Facebook at all. I saw it on a microblogging platform called Tumblr. Someone had taken a screenshot of the ad saying, I wonder what they've found. And I'm like, reading it and realized that I actually fit the bill. I have all of the right experience and I tend to be on the smaller side. I'm 5'3", so I'm pretty short. And so I threw my hat in the ring. I wasn't expecting at all to get a look in by Lee. I just sort of thought, I'd be foolish if I didn't try, even if I didn't think I was going to get anywhere. And, a couple of weeks later, I was in South Africa in this cave system, helping excavate this extraordinary thing. So that's sort of like how I got involved in the dig.
Awesome. Well, you have Miguel joining you. Miguel, I believe, is one of your PhD students.
Yeah, so I'm actually Miguel's mentor. I'm only a postdoc, so I can't actually supervise a student on my own. He's my supervisor's PhD student. And Miguel here sort of came to us initially, really interested in paleoanthropology, and I think I'm going to let him talk to you a little bit about what he's interested in and what he's been doing.
Hello. So I'm Miguel. Like Ellen said, I am an incoming grad student, PhD student here. I originally came into the lab with just an interest in paleoanthropology and human origins and all our ancestors. And through my work here, I've been fortunate enough to work with Ellen on her pilot projects on Homo Naledi and get involved in translating and narrating the exhibit that we're going to see in VR exhibit at the museum. So that's
in Spanish.
In Spanish, yes. I forgot to mention that. I translated into Spanish and narrated the whole thing. So that's exciting. So now it's completely bilingual. So you speak Spanish. There we go. I don't know. I'm hoping to get more involved in the project. If there's anything else I can be involved in, I'd be happy to help.
I'm sure there is.
I've been able to help Ellen on her pilot projects to see how Homo naledi might move and interact with the environment, and studying on the upper limbs, see if they were rock climbers or how that's working out for them. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, I mean, Miguel's been pretty integral actually in collecting some of my samples. So for some of the work that I've been doing, looking at the shape of the upper limb bones in Homo naledi, Miguel actually went about collecting the correct samples from within our own collection here and at the Burke Museum, as well as helping me scan some of the material so that I could actually work on the digital copies and actually create computational sort of models of the material. That I can compare with Homo naledi and get a good idea of kind of where they fit in terms of how they compare to species that we know how they move around the environment. And if Homo naledi has a similar shape in some of their bones, then it might actually imply that they moved around the environment in a similar way. And all of this is really, really important in terms of reconstructing the life histories and life ways of this new species that we've found, and sort of getting a feeling for how they fit in the greater scheme of human evolution.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you both for joining us today. I'm sure we'll have some questions coming your way shortly, but I'm going to jump back to Becca for just a moment. So Becca, we just met Miguel and he translated the VR experience into Spanish. What are the other languages that it's going to be available in?
So the cave is in South Africa, right? And South Africa has 11 official languages, and we can't put all 11 on the virtual reality. There's not enough room on anyone's phone for that kind of data. So we picked 3 different languages that are indigenous to South Africa, that are native to South Africa. isiZulu, which is the most widely spoken language in South Africa. Sesotho, which is the language from which the word Naledi and Dinaledi, the name of the cave and the name of the species, come from. It's local to our area. And then also Setswana, which is another language that's really commonly spoken in that part of South Africa where the cave is. And we wanted to do that so that school kids and other people who were in South Africa living close to the cave and might be interested in it could hear about the cave from scientists who are also speakers of all of those languages. So people on our own team, like Miguel speaking in Spanish, we found people from our own team who spoke those languages and asked them to do the narration. And I think that's pretty exciting. So then kids who speak different languages at home can see scientists who also speak those languages doing different kinds of work.
All right, that's awesome. So at the end, we'll definitely make sure we talk a little bit more about where students can find the Dinaledi VR to download for free when it is released. But I think we should meet some of our classrooms now and start taking some questions.
Great.
So all 7 of our classrooms made it in, which is awesome. We've got classrooms joining us from Canada and the US. So let's meet our first classroom now. Let's go to Mrs. Landis's class. They are grade 6s joining us in San Jose. Looks like they've got a big group of classes joining us. Let me turn their microphone on. How's everyone doing? All right, who'd like to fire away with the first question?
You have a question you want to ask? No. Wait, she's coming.
That's okay.
There's the scoot stuff down. Okay, go ahead. So I can hear her.
So how did you guys, like besides the cave, besides the hikers, like how did you guys find out about like the bones? Like did they just tell the person, or were there more people?
Yeah. So the cavers that found it, like Ellen said, the cavers that found the fossils when they were out exploring the cave, they took some photos and they brought it back to our professor. And the professor looked at the photos and said, "Oh, I need help." And so really it was just those 2 guys that found them. And then they brought the picture to the professor, and the professor put this ad on Facebook, and that's how we all got shuttled quickly to South Africa to excavate them. And pretty soon it wasn't just those 2 cavers and the professor, but pretty soon it was this team. Boy, in 2013, there were 60 different people on site at any time. On the surface, mostly, just a few of us underground, but people, the team just kept growing and growing and growing as we needed more help with different parts of it.
All right, let's meet another classroom. Let's go to Mrs. Anderson's class. Grade 5's joining us in Burlington, Ontario, so not too far from me. Let me turn their microphone on. Where is it? Oh, Mrs. Anderson, you're just off of my screen, so if you don't mind just turning the microphone on for me. We have so many classes, I can't reach them all on my screen. There they are. Hey, Mrs. Anderson's class.
We are not Spanish. Shut up. So we go ahead. Guys.
All right, who's got a question?
Yeah, it's gonna. When did you find out about the Homo Naledi, whatever the name is?
Naledi. When exactly?
Yeah.
Yeah, the date?
Ellen?
Did you hear it?
So the question was, when exactly did we find out about Homo naledi?
Yep.
In terms of like when we saw the ad or when we figured out that it was a new species?
Ooh, that's let's go with both.
All right, so I think I saw the ad probably not too long after it was posted on Facebook. I think it was within a couple of days. So I can't actually remember when it was posted. I think it must have been September.
Stop waving, guys.
I'm sure that Becca was probably within a similar time frame in terms of when she said. Yeah. So when we figured out it was a new species, when we called it Homo naledi, so about a year after we had done the initial round of excavations, and then Becca and Marina had come back and, was it you and Marina? Yeah, had come back and done a little bit more excavation afterwards. Lee put together basically a kind of research workshop. He brought in researchers from all over the world with different kinds of expertise. So people who specialize in the skull, people who specialize like me in the upper limb, people who specialize in the spine, hips, leg, foot, all parts of the body basically. And we assembled in South Africa for a month, and we worked intensively on this new material, describing all of the aspects of it that we could and performing some of the initial analyses. And out of this work of a month that took, it was roughly 10,000 person hours of work. So everyone working together had comprehensively described all of the skeletal material. And what we had found is that it doesn't really compare well with any other known species of fossil hominin, which led us to the conclusion that this new material must constitute something new, something different from anything else that we knew. And so Lee and a fellow named John Hawkes and a bunch of other researchers went about the process of deciding on a name for the new species, which isn't arbitrary. There's a whole heap of different rules that govern how we describe or name species that must be followed. And so after having gone through this process, they arrived at the name Homo naledi, which describes its position relative to us in terms of it's in the same genus as us, but also the new species name says that it's something different. And because it's a Situtu, I can't even pronounce it, I'm sorry, it's rubbish. But it's a South African language word which harkens back to its origins in South Africa and is a way of honoring the people and the place that the material was found. So it was about a year afterwards that we realized that it was a new thing and it was called Homo naledi. All
right, perfect, good question. Let's visit another classroom. This time we will go to Leamington, Ontario. We've got some grade 3-4 students with Mrs. Reeb. Let me turn their microphone on. How are we doing, Leamington?
Hi, I'm Addison, and my question is, what was your most recent bone find?
What was
the most recent bone find, or I guess fossil find? So what was maybe one of the last things you uncovered?
Yeah. So this bone that we found most recently actually took us, we worked on it for about 6 months. We first found it with Ellen back last September, so a year ago, and we worked on it for a while and we couldn't figure out how to uncover it. So we had to leave the cave and we all went home for a couple of months and thought about what to do. And we finally came back just this past March, so just a few months ago, to uncover it. And it turns out that it wasn't one little bone. It was a whole bunch of bones all together, and including the whole upper teeth of a very young Homo naledi, a Homo naledi that's probably about the age of a 3rd grader, so about your size. And it's pretty exciting to have that because we get to see what a little kid Homo naledi would look like. What their bones would look like. And that was really exciting. But it took us a long, long, long time to find those bones and to get them out.
All right. So it takes some patience as well.
Yeah.
Let's go back to San Jose. We have another grade 6 class with Mrs. Adelman. Let me turn her microphone on. How are we doing, grade 6s?
My question is, why can't you dig like more space for the people in the caves to crawl through?
All right.
Talk about Ellen. Why can't they just make the spaces bigger so everybody can get in?
So caves are rock, obviously. And the thing about many of the passages is they're actually bounded by rock as well. And that means that we can't just dig into it and create wider spaces. Because that's a logistical difficulty, right? That's a difficulty of actually trying to do the thing, is that it's really hard. But there's also other reasons. So one of the other really important things is maintaining the cave itself. Caves are actually really unique ecosystems. And by going in and out of this cave constantly, we actually do damage the cave as we work. And because they're so unique, they're little microcosms of, different animals live there, different things doing their bits. We don't really want to interfere with them too much. And so we make a point to avoid damaging the cave system as much as we can. We put up with some of the difficulties of getting into the cave so that we can maintain that environment, maintain that habitat for the future. We also have, other things to consider as well. Like, we don't want to potentially destroy any valuable evidence that might be useful to us later on when understanding the cave system. Because a really big part of excavating a fossil find and actually beginning to understand it is understanding the environment that it was placed in. And we can't do that if we just willy-nilly destroy things just to make it easier. So it's actually a really important part that we keep the cave system as close to its natural state as possible. All
right, that is a really good question because, that probably the first thing that comes to a lot of people's minds is, well, can we get more people down there? But those are some very good reasons for leaving the system the way it is. So we're going to go now to another class in San Jose. Some more sixth graders are joining us with Mrs. Wansowich. Let me turn on her microphone. How we doing, grade sixes?
Good.
All right, we're ready.
So, what was the first fossil that you ever found?
Oh,
That's a good question. Do you remember?
no.
Found between Ellen and our colleagues and I, we've found more than 2,000 fossils in the cave system. And it's really hard to remember back to the very first one. I think I was so overwhelmed about being in a cave and picking up these fossils that were so rare and so exciting that I remember calling up to the surface to get permission from the professor like 3 times. Are you sure I can pick up this fossil? And I remember that, but I don't remember what piece of bone it was. It was a long bone of some sort, you know, part of an arm or a leg of some sort, but I don't remember exactly what. That's kind of funny. No one's ever asked me that before.
I have a distinct feeling I may have just picked up bone mash the first day.
Just some smooshed bone.
Some smushed bone.
Well, what about before your time with Rising Star? What about when you first picked up a fossil? Do you have a memory from that of what it might have been?
I did. So before I worked at Rising Star, I worked at a couple of sites in Spain. So the sites I worked at in Spain were Neanderthal sites, one in particular called Cima de las Palomas. Has some very, very wonderful Neanderthal fossil material. And I remember picking up, there's a kind of rock that forms in these kinds of cave systems in Spain called breccia. And breccia is a mix of all, you know, different things, fossils, other bits of rock, sediment, all concreted together over time. And I remember picking up this lump of breccia that was about this big, about a foot wide, I suppose, and sticking up out of the top of it was just this great big bit of femur bone, of your thigh bone, just sticking straight up out of the side of it. I remember that pretty distinctly.
Very cool. What about you, Miguel? Have you been out in the field and found something neat?
Not yet. Not yet. Soon. Hopefully very soon.
All right. Becca, what about you growing up?
Yeah, so I am an archaeologist by training, and that's what my PhD is in archaeology as opposed to paleoanthropology. So I've worked on lots of different sites where we're finding artifacts and modern human bones. But Rising Star is the first site I worked on that we were finding ancient hominids. That's what the project was for. So I've found some pretty exciting artifacts and some modern human bones in other places. But fossils, Rising Star was my first one.
All right. Well, let's jump to Mrs. Stafford's class, grade 4-5s in Roseneath, Ontario. And I'll just need you to turn the microphone on for me. Go ahead and say hi, and then let's take a question.
Go ahead, say hi. Just listen. How many days or months or years did it take to find all the fossils?
Months or days or years? Well, we've been working on the project for 5 years, but we're not underground every day. 30, 60, 90. I don't know. What do you think, Ellen? 120 days?
That sounds about right. In terms of, like, I mean, the big expedition's usually in there for a month, you know, straight, and then we leave for a while to, you know, do analyses and stuff. And then there are the smaller expeditions where, you know, only a couple of us go back and we excavate for maybe 2 weeks in a blitz, and then we leave again. Yeah, that sounds about right. 190 odd.
120 days or so?
And then from what I understand, you've still got lots more to do.
Yes, we're going to be doing more excavations starting a month from now, actually. We're going to go another one of those small sort of blitz excavations Ellen's just mentioned. A couple of us are going to go back underground and see what kind of more fossils we can find, because we know that there's lots. We'll be going back there for years and years, and some of the students in the classrooms right now may still, when they grow up and become paleoanthropologists, may have a chance to work in Rising Star. There's that many fossils there.
All right. And what's really neat is when you guys do go back down, the cave system has been wired up with really good internet. So last year, we were able to do several events where we were right down in the cave, talking to people in 3 different parts of the cave, watching the excavation going on live, learning about what was happening, seeing the cave environment. So that's going to be really neat. That'll start, I believe, end of October and early November. So really looking forward to going back underground and taking some students with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, who haven't we visited yet? Mrs. Penfold's class. I know you had a little bit of trouble with tech. If you want to turn your microphone on in Orangeville, Ontario, and if you have a question, we'd love to have it. So I'm sorry I can't reach your microphone. We just have so many classrooms, I can't reach the bottom couple of microphones to turn on my end. All right, I can't hear you yet. There should be a little button on the top of the screen in the menu. It looks like a microphone. It's probably red. If you click it, I hear sound. I think we're good.
Can you hear us now?
We gotcha.
Okay. So we're really sorry if this has already been asked because we missed the beginning because of internet issues, but here we go.
Why did you guys even go into Rising Star in the first place? Like, how did you guys know there would be fossils or anything down there?
All right, Becca, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So how did we know? Well, in that part of South Africa, there are fossils all over the place in lots of different caves. And Rising Star was a cave that hadn't been looked at for fossils before. So a couple of cavers were out exploring the caves to see, different caves to see what kind of fossils there were. And they were just sort of, they like to go caving. It's their hobby. It was their hobby. Now it's their job. And they were just crawling around in the cave to see if they saw any fossils. And woo, they found some. So they took some pictures of the fossils and they brought the pictures back to the professor, Lee Berger, and he saw them and said, oh, those are really important fossils. We need to figure out how to excavate them. That's kind of how we found it. We knew that there were fossils in caves in the area, and we just didn't know that yet that there were fossils in that cave until somebody went looking.
All right, great. Well, I'm glad the internet problems sorted themselves out because it's great to have you guys joining us. So we visited all our live classrooms. We've got time for a few more questions. So give me some waving in the classrooms, and that'll be my key, my clue that I need to come back and visit you. Oh, well, lots of waving. So let's get started. Mrs. Adelman's class, go ahead if you have a question.
Was Homo Naledi the only bones you found in Rising Star Cave?
Miguel?
Yes. Yes. That the Homo Naledi. So the bones that were found in that specific cave were all from the Homo Naledi species, and I think that's all of them have been that, right?
Yeah, we did find occasionally we'd come across some little rodent teeth and stuff, and we found one modern owl sitting on the surface. Nice. So a relatively recent entry into the system on top of all the Homo Naledi stuff.
So that's for the bones themselves. The humanoid bones are all from the Homo Naledi. Jeez.
All right, and I see Mrs. Reeves' class is holding up a thank you sign, so I'm thinking that they have to jump off now. Yeah. Let's see. Looking for some more wave-in. Okay, Mrs. Landis's group. Your microphone is on.
Oh, no, Alex. We had a girl last time. Ready?
Oh, so I was wondering, how old exactly is the Homo Naledi that you found? Like, how old were they when you found it? How old do you think the bones are?
In terms of how long they've been sitting in the system, or how old the individuals are?
I'd say both.
Both? All right. So the deposit in the system, the mass of Homo Naledi stuff, has been dated to 236 to 335,000 years ago. So that overlaps in time with the earliest members of our own species, the earliest Homo sapiens in South Africa. So that's in the big scheme of things, and especially when we're looking at the form of Homo naledi, which is pretty primitive, this is a pretty unusual time period to find them in. But in terms of the individual ages of the individuals in this that we have excavated, we have a number of individuals. We have about 16 now, I think, maybe more. And they tend to range across the whole spectrum of a population. We have little tiny babies, so babies that are only just born or, were soon to be born, all the way through to older adults that were perhaps sort of around 30 human years in age. So we have everything in between there as well. We've got little teenagers, we've got babies, toddlers, we've got sort of older individuals, adults, and very old individuals as well. Some of them we only really know from little bits of teeth that they've left behind. We don't have bones for them. That would be the very, very young baby that I'm talking about. But for other individuals, we have, bigger parts of their skeletons, so we can actually get a good idea of what they look like in terms of their faces and their bodies.
All right, great. And then let's do one more question. Oh, I wish you could visit every single classroom. We'll go back to Mrs. Anderson's classroom. Mrs. Anderson, you guys have a class or a question?
Wait.
Can you hear us?
Hello? I can hear you, yeah.
What animals have you seen in the cave?
I think that's a good one for you, Becca.
For me? So Ellen and I were sitting in the cave last year, and it's very dark in the cave. All you can see is where your headlamp is shining. And we were sitting in the cave, and all of a sudden, this thing, we could feel it flying right between us, and we both went, "Wah!" And everyone on the surface who was watching us on the camera, I think they all laughed. It was a bat that flew by us, and we see bats near the entrance of the cave quite a bit, and sometimes they fly way back to where we are. I don't know if they're curious or they're lost or they're just going on a walk, I don't know, or a fly. But we see bats back there. There are snakes sometimes near the entrance. There are these little things called dussies. They're rock hyrax that crawl around near the entrance to the cave. And we saw recently a bug that was about this big, just a couple inches long, and it was flat, and it had loads and loads and loads of legs. It was and it was really translucent looking. So it was a cave adapted bug, one that was specially adapted to live in a dark environment. Yeah, and Ellen's definitely making the icky bug face. But it's
do a lot of stuff that bugs know. No.
All right, very cool. Well, I'm really excited about the upcoming release of Naledi VR. It's going to be pretty awesome to be able students to be able to literally put themselves down there, hear narration from the experts, manipulate virtually some of the fossils. Can you tell me a little bit more about the experience, and then maybe just what's needed to join?
Sure. So like you said, that the virtual reality is something that you'll be able to put on your smartphone, and then you can put it into a VR viewer like this one. These are made out of cardboard. You can actually make them in your classrooms with a cardboard and a soda bottle to make the lenses, and you hold it up to your face and you can see the cave. Miguel, since you did the narration in Spanish, do you want to talk a little bit about what you see when you're in there? Because you've seen the video of the VR.
Yeah. So when you go in there, we'll hear in the translation and the narration too. You get to see all the entrance. You get to see the chutes. You get to see the site where the fossils are, and you're able to excavate the fossils there and put little flags on it just so you know where they are and be able to go and collect them. You get to see some of the original flags that are put on there, and it's just overall a really cool experience. You get to see like little different bone fragments. You're able to pick them up with your cursor, and I think on the app, I think you just have to stare at it for a little longer, and you're going to be able to manipulate it and move it around, and it'll be cool. You get to put yourself in the cave and be a scientist, pick them up.
All right, awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to the release. I will share the website as well with the classrooms who joined us live today, so they can keep an eye out for it. And once we have the new date, I'll make sure that that gets out as well. Well, Becca, Ellen, and Miguel, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Thank you for sharing a little bit of the Rising Star system with us and your experiences. And of course, a huge thank you to our classrooms joining us from Canada and the US. So I'm going to turn their microphones on in just a minute. We'll let them get loud, say goodbye, and thank you. But before then, I just want to say thank you again. And yeah, it was a great hangout, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of you again in a month or so.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, here we go, classrooms. Microphones are coming on nice and loud. Goodbye and thank you. And we'll sign off for today. All right, as always, they're really good at that part. So thanks everyone for joining us. Have a good night. We're signing off for today.